You've seen it happen. The office psychopath gets the promotion. The school bully becomes CEO. The lying politician wins the election. The backstabber reaches the top while the honest worker stays trapped at the bottom. It's not just unfair, it's obscene. Every day you witness the triumph of the cruel over the kind, the selfish over the selfless, the liars over the truthful. And deep down, in that place you don't talk about, a disturbing question forms. Are your principles making you weak? Is your morality the very chain that keeps you shackled while the monsters run free? Look around. The world doesn't reward the virtuous, it devours them. And tonight we're going to discover why. This isn't philosophy class. This is survival. History screams one truth at us: ruthlessness works. Alexander conquered the known world by 32, leaving mountains of corpses in his wake. Caesar crossed the Rubicon, betrayed the Republic, and seized absolute power. Genghis Khan slaughtered entire cities so thoroughly that population levels took centuries to recover. We call them great, while burying their victims in unmarked graves. This pattern repeats everywhere. The hedge fund manager who shorts companies into oblivion lives in a mansion. The executive who outsources jobs to boost stock prices gets an 8-figure bonus. The social climber who gossips and backstabs becomes the center of attention. Meanwhile, those who get played. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this dark reality with unflinching clarity. He identified two opposing moral systems that have battled throughout human history: master morality, the ethics of predators; values, strength, dominance, risk-taking, and self-determination. Good means powerful, bad means weak. Slave morality, the ethics of prey; values, humility, compassion, obedience, and self-sacrifice. Good means harmless, evil means dangerous. Most people claim to despise the masters while secretly envying them. They condemn ruthlessness publicly while privately wondering why their virtue goes unrewarded. The uncomfortable truth? Slave morality wasn't created to help you win. It was designed to protect the herd from the very people who dominate it. When you renounce power as evil, guess who gets to keep it all? The exact people who never cared about your moral rules in the first place. Every time you hesitate because of fairness, a ruthless competitor advances. Every time you compromise to keep peace, a dominator expands their territory. Every time you wait your turn, someone else cuts the line. And society applauds your noble failure while rewarding their dishonorable success. Your brain wasn't designed for fairness. It was designed for survival. Evolutionary psychologists have discovered something chilling. The traits we condemn morally are often the same traits that helped our ancestors pass on their genes. The dark triad, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, correlates strongly with professional success across multiple fields. A 2010 study found that CEOs display psychopathic traits at 4 times the rate of the general population. Similar patterns appear in law, politics, surgery, and sales. Why? Because these traits provide ruthless advantages. Narcissists project unshakable confidence, even when wrong. And humans instinctively follow confidence over competence. Machiavellians manipulate social systems better than anyone, exploiting trust while never giving it. Psychopaths make cold, calculated decisions without the emotional baggage that paralyzes normal people. Evolution doesn't care about your moral outrage. For millions of years, those who hesitated often starved. Those who showed weakness were eliminated. Those who trusted blindly were exploited. Your moral instincts evolved for small tribal groups where reputation mattered and everyone knew everyone else. But we now live in vast, anonymous societies where the ruthless can exploit loophole after loophole without consequences. The lion feels no guilt when it tears apart the gazelle. The storm doesn't apologize to the village it destroys. And the corporate raider doesn't lose sleep over the lives ruined by his latest acquisition. Nature rewards strength, cunning, and decisive action. not fairness, kindness, or restraint. This creates the ultimate trap. Your moral principles, the very values you think make you good, simultaneously make you vulnerable to those who don't share them. The ruthless win because they've mastered weapons you refuse to touch. First weapon, fear. They make examples of those who challenge them. They create consequences so severe that most people stay in line. While you try to inspire, they intimidate, and fear motivates more powerfully than hope ever will. Second weapon, shame. They'll make you feel small for wanting what they openly take. They'll label your ambition as greed while celebrating their own success mindset. They monopolize power while making you feel guilty for desiring just a fraction of what they possess. Third weapon, social proof. They surround themselves with validators who amplify their status. They create the illusion that everyone important already accepts their dominance, making resistance seem not just dangerous but socially suicidal. Fourth weapon, information asymmetry. They operate with knowledge you don't have. When you're playing checkers with incomplete information, they're playing chess with full visibility of the board. Fifth weapon, audacity. They take what others wouldn't dare claim. The sheer boldness of their moves paralyzes opposition through shock and disbelief. You've been conditioned to reject these weapons as immoral while they use them to control the very systems that determine who wins and who loses. But here's what's truly perverse. Society pretends to condemn these tactics while consistently rewarding those who master them. We teach children to share, then worship billionaires who monopolize wealth. We preach honesty, then elect politicians who lie strategically. We value kindness, then promote the cutthroat over the compassionate. This isn't hypocrisy, it's hierarchy. The moral rules were never meant to apply equally to everyone. They were designed to keep the masses predictable while the ruthless remained unbound. Here's the twist in this dark tale. The ruthless rise rapidly, but they often fall just as spectacularly. Napoleon conquered Europe, then died in exile. Hitler's thousand-year Reich lasted barely a decade. Enron's executives went from magazine covers to prison jumpsuits. Elizabeth Holmes from billionaire to convicted felon. Why? Because ruthlessness without wisdom contains the seeds of its own destruction. The narcissist eventually overreaches. The manipulator creates too many enemies. The fearmonger finally meets someone who isn't afraid. Power without balance devours itself. The ruthless leader who rules through fear eventually finds themselves surrounded by enemies, waiting for the first sign of weakness. The manipulator discovers that they've created a world where no one can be trusted, including their own allies. The empire built on exploitation collapses when the exploited finally have nothing left to lose. This creates the central paradox of power. Those most capable of seizing it are often least equipped to maintain it. The tyrant lives in constant fear of betrayal because they know exactly how they would act if positions were reversed. They see enemies everywhere because they've made enemies of everyone. They trust no one because they themselves cannot be trusted. Their victory carries within it the virus of their eventual defeat. But this cycle, the rise of the ruthless followed by their inevitable fall, offers cold comfort to those crushed along the way. By the time justice arrives, if it ever does, countless lives have already been destroyed. So is there no escape from this brutal pattern? Are we doomed to be either victims of the ruthless or to become the very monsters we despise? Nietzsche saw a third path, the way of the Übermensch, the overman who transcends both predator and prey mentalities. This isn't some mystical superhero. It's a human who refuses the false choice between exploitation and submission, between dominating others and being dominated. The Übermensch creates power rather than extracting it. Picture yourself standing at the edge of an abyss. Behind you lies the comfortable prison of conventional morality, with its empty promises that goodness will be rewarded. Before you stretches the unknown, a territory without pre-written rules. Most people retreat into familiar bondage, A few leap into the chaos, becoming the monsters they once feared. But the rarest breed does something else entirely. They forge a third path. They reject both the sheepish obedience of slave morality and the parasitic dominance of the merely ruthless. Instead, they create their own values, define their own purpose, and generate power through mastery rather than manipulation. This isn't about abandoning ethics. It's about recognizing that true power comes not from controlling others, but from absolute control over yourself. While the ruthless exhaust themselves fighting external enemies, the Übermensch conquers the most formidable opponent, the self. They master their emotions, transcend their limitations, and forge an unbreakable will. This is what Nietzsche called the will to power in its highest form. Not domination over others, but self-mastery so complete that external opposition becomes almost irrelevant. The merely ruthless are driven by insecurity. The Übermensch acts from overflowing strength. The ruthless must constantly defend their position. The Übermensch creates value that makes them indispensable. The ruthless extract power from a system. The Übermensch creates an entirely new system. This is why the worst people may temporarily rise, but they never truly transcend. They play a finite game they're ultimately destined to lose. The Übermensch plays an infinite game they can never lose, because they define the victory conditions. Let's get practical. How do you navigate a world where ruthlessness is rewarded without becoming what you despise? First, abandon the comforting lie that the world is fair. It isn't. Never was, never will be. The moment you stop expecting fairness is the moment you start seeing reality clearly. Second, recognize that power isn't inherently evil. Powerlessness is. Without power, you cannot protect yourself, help others, or change anything. The goal isn't to reject power, but to redefine it. Third, master strategic empathy. Understand the motivations of the ruthless not to become them, but to avoid becoming their prey. Read people more accurately than they read themselves. See the chessboard 10 moves ahead. Fourth, develop what the Stoics called the inner citadel, a core self that remains untouchable regardless of external circumstances. When your sense of worth comes from within, external manipulators lose their primary weapon, your need for validation. Fifth, embrace strategic discomfort. The ruthless count on your fear of conflict, confrontation, and temporary pain. When you willingly accept these things in service of your values, you become vastly more dangerous to them. Sixth, create value instead of extracting it. The ruthless consume what others build. Become a creator, and you'll possess something they desperately need, but cannot generate themselves. Seventh, build genuine alliances based on mutual benefit and shared principles. While the ruthless stand alone, surrounded by temporary allies of convenience, you'll create networks of real strength. Finally, play the infinite game. The ruthless win quarter by quarter, election by election, by short-term victory. But those who think in decades rather than days are playing a different game entirely, one the merely ruthless cannot comprehend, let alone win. This isn't about moral platitudes or wishful thinking. It's about something far more powerful: strategic wisdom. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one willing to do anything to win. It's the one who doesn't need to. Most people remain trapped in a prison they don't even see. They follow rules designed by the ruthless to benefit the ruthless, then wonder why virtue goes unrewarded. Some, upon seeing this truth, abandon all principle and become the very predators they once feared, not realizing they've merely exchanged one form of bondage for another. But you have a third option. You can become the architect of your own values, the master of your own fate, the creator of your own power. You can transcend both naive morality and mindless ruthlessness. The game is rigged, but you don't have to play it. You can create your own. The ruthless rise because they understand power better than the virtuous. The solution isn't to abandon virtue. It's to develop a more sophisticated understanding of power than the ruthless themselves possess. Let them play their short-term games. You're playing for eternity. If this perspective has shaken you, good. If it's made you uncomfortable, even better. Growth happens at the edge of comfort, and wisdom comes from confronting uncomfortable truths. This channel exists to explore the depths that others avoid, the raw, unfiltered realities of power, psychology, and human potential. If you're ready to go deeper, to see the world as it truly is, rather than how we wish it to be, hit subscribe now. Smash that like button if this video forced you to confront truths you've always suspected but never acknowledged. And leave a comment answering this. If you could possess immense power but only for one purpose, what would you use it for? Your answer reveals more about you than you might think. Remember, the worst people succeed because they understand the game better than the good ones. The solution isn't to become worse, it's to become wiser. The abyss is waiting. Will you take the leap?